Christopher Scott, you're an Emmy nominee for Best Choreography for the third time for your work on So You Think You Can Dance, following nominations in 2012 and 2014. So how was it getting the news that you were back in the race this
year? It feels pretty much the same. I mean, it's pretty trippy. I think that's the biggest thing. And nowadays, it's funny, the way that we find out is just from like picking up that iPhone in the morning and like looking at your Instagram notes and text messages and stuff. So it was very almost surreal. It just feels like a little bit of the Twilight Zone because it's happened before. So you know the feeling, but the feeling doesn't change. You kind of like think like, no, this can't be real. And then you gotta like check it. You gotta like see it yourself. Yeah, great feeling.
And, you know, there are 4 nominees for So You Think You Can Dance this year, including Travis Wall and Mandy Moore, who you were nominated against before. And what's it like being able to celebrate, you know, that kind of recognition with so many of your peers also getting recognized at the same time?
No, it's amazing. Mandy Moore is actually the first text message I saw. And she's like, congratulations, that's awesome. And I didn't even know that she was nominated yet myself. So I was like, oh, thanks, Mandy. And then like I went online and saw it and saw that she was nominated and I hit her back. So I mean, it's really, I feel like we're kind of that category that is really bonded and we're all friends. And so it's like, really there's not a competitive kind of vibe between us. We always kind of hang out. I can't imagine it being like that in other categories, but I guess it probably is. Yeah, I feel really lucky in that world because it's, you know, we all support each other. And it's really amazing. Like genuinely for Al Blackstone, like it's so cool to see him nominated. Even Chloe Arnold, who's not from So You Can Dance for her nomination, but she works on the show. And she used to teach me when I was a kid. So we're like, it's just this really kind of, it just makes us feel very proud, I think, to see each other nominated.
And you know, the TV dance world does seem very familial in that way, you know, and working on So You Think You Can Dance with, you know, so many other choreographers on that show and so many other disciplines. Do you get a lot of inspiration and a lot of, you know, ideas from other people's choreography that you use to inform your own work?
I mean, I think we all have our influences. You know, my biggest influences are kind of from outside of the show. I was very lucky to come in under a director, a filmmaker named John M. Chu. You know, so he really kind of taught me this style of storytelling that I kind of fell in love with and helped me kind of develop my own voice. And then Jamal Sims was the choreographer that really kind of raised me in the specific field of choreography. So yeah, I really try my best because it does get, you know, a little tricky if you get too inspired by another person because they have their own voice. You don't want to take somebody's voice, you want to have your own. And so I really do consciously kind of try to work hard at having my own voice. You know, and I've been really lucky, I think, to have a influence from street dance. It's really kind of driven my style forward. But yeah, it is. It's tricky. Can't bite. They call it biting in the dance world. So no bite is allowed.
Now, this year you're nominated for 2 routines, Prism and Say You Won't Let Go. What about those routines stood out to you that made you want to select those, you know, as sort of representations of your work this year?
Yeah, I think Say You Won't Let Go was very. I don't know. I think that the process to the end result was very intimate with the dancers. And I think it really translated in their final performance and it kind of made you just feel something. I think I was very proud of the feeling that they gave the audience. It was really the connection and the relationship that they had. Because when I first got their names, because they draw out of a hat, basically they draw out of a hat the night of the live show. So following the live show, they go and they pick who has. And when I found out that I had them two, I had one day in between from then into rehearsal. And so I had to like, it wasn't like, in my mind, it wasn't the 2 of them. I didn't, because I just didn't, you know, Allison's a bit older than Logan, and it just seemed like, oh, this is the right routine for them, because it's very romantic. The way I saw it in my head was very different than the way they performed it. So I, kind of freaked out a little bit. I was like, oh, I don't know. And then I got in rehearsal with them, and all that kind of fear and everything just kind of went away because I watched how much care they put into it, and they were really zoned in. And like from the beginning of rehearsal, they were focused. That's really what it takes to get to the best. And they were determined. So I think watching the process happen, it's become the most important part. I used to always obsess over the product, but now it's really about the process. You focus on the process and have a good one. The product is just, and so that one was really special in that way. They kind of like proved me wrong, and I'm really, really proud of them. And it really, they made me feel something. It's like I can't tell if they make everybody else feel something, but I know for me, they made me feel something genuinely, and that's all I can really do. That one was really special. And then, the Prism routine was extra special to me too, because it just, it had a deeper meaning to me that's not really like obvious in the piece. And, but for me, it really became this, the inspiration was about like being trained, because I was hanging out with my mentor, one of my mentors, John Shu, and I was watching him train his dog and getting his dog trained. And it was kind of like this amazing, this dog like sit, and everybody was so happy that they're like, oh my God, we got a chef to sit. And then I was like, it's so crazy because we're like so much more trained than these dogs like ever will be, as human beings. We're crossing the street, and like, oh, red light, like, we should stop, and then like, oh, to get my thing, and everything just becomes, it just kind of like hit me about how trained I am as a human being, and all the things that I deal with in my personal life that like feel like it's just like in my nature, but then I'm like, oh no, I probably learned that, as a very young kid, and, in relationships, I've learned how to be in relationships and how to push people away and this and that, all these kind of things. So the relationship, so the piece became very personal to me. And these blocks were just kind of representing that, these kind of foundational things that help train a human being. You'll never know that from watching the piece, but for me, it meant a lot. And so to watch it kind of unfold and to watch the dancers accomplish this challenge, because it's probably one of the hardest routines I've ever done on the show. And it doesn't look like that, but as a prop, those blocks, they're no joke. They're really, really tricky. So, it all just kind of came together, and and again, it kind of gave me a feeling that I felt watching it, and that's kind of all I can go off of.
And how is it to work with, when you have that kind of idea for that kind of a prop, how hard is it to incorporate that into choreography, into the other ideas that you have?
It's like the hardest. I kind of take a gamble every time I do it, because one, the dancers, they don't have a big styrofoam block to take home and practice every day in between. So really, it's like the only time they get to practice with it is when I have them in the various, because So You Think You Can Dance is the fastest process I've ever been a part of. And then even for me to create, like I can't, if I go home late at night and I want to change something, I'm like, oh, normally I can just do it in my bedroom late at night in front of the mirror and be like, okay, cool, I'll come back tomorrow and I'll fix it. But I have to have the block to do it myself anyways. And then, I didn't have styrofoam blocks for the actual creative process. I had cardboard boxes. So I had to kind of like assume certain things would work and just kind of be like, I think that'll work out. So, it was quite a process, and it is the more like kind of unique and hard to acquire a prop it is, the harder, the more pressure it is on everybody, because there's just no most of the time.
And is it when you finally got to that live show and they were performing that routine, was it part of you like holding your breath, like, is this going to come off the way I envisioned it, or had you by that point had enough kind of experience, rehearsing it and preparing it that you felt like very, very confident about that?
I hold my breath every single time I'm on So You Think You Can Dance, and there's a routine going on. I mean, the executive producer, he calls me a pressure cooker, because it really is, the pressure just gets so high, because it's just, you know, it's the only show on TV where they judge the choreographers, but then it's the only show on television where they give like face recognition to the choreographers. So it's kind of this like, you know, really double-edged sword, because, you know, we are putting our work up for judgment. And, you know, I've finally come to terms with it. It took me about 3 or 4 seasons to really understand, like, you know what, this is just part of the show. And I just have to do a good job and try my best. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I'd rather experiment and fail and try to push my style of choreography further and further than just kind of like play it safe and just do your kind of typical routine. You know, and Prison was definitely one of those. It was definitely one of those gambles where I had no idea, because like I said, it was really hard for the dancers. I mean, just the moment where we push all the blocks together and 2 dancers like start walking across in slow motion, and just that alone, it looks really easy, but that was like, you know, that takes a chunk of time out of our rehearsals just to keep practicing that, so that the dancers don't like fall over. And there was a couple times where these dancers fell over, and you know, so I'm holding my breath every second of the way. When they cut to us on television, most of the choreographers are. I think that's also why we're so bonded, is because when we're sitting there, I mean, when somebody's piece goes up, we're all like, we give them love. We're like tapping them on the shoulder and the knees. I mean, you know, it's quite an experience.
And yeah, another big challenge with choreographing on the show is that it's a competition that brings in different dancers from different disciplines who maybe aren't experienced with every different style. The Say You Won't Let Go routine, you know, the hip hop routine performed by a couple of contemporary dancers for the most part. What's it like, you know, trying to adapt, you know, your, you know, kind of teaching or your choreography to just in general people who maybe haven't had as much experience in what you're trying to teach them?
Yeah, I mean, it's really, that's the hardest thing. What happens sometimes is we start to forget that the show's been on for so long, and dancers are getting much more versatile already. So we're starting to forget, I think, sometimes that these dancers really, this is far away from their style. And hip hop is one of the hardest ones, I think. I might be biased because it's my style or whatever, but I think, you know, hip hop already has hundreds of different styles, and you could break it down. I'm pulling that number out of nowhere, but you know, it has a ton of different styles. So even if you come in as a hip hop dancer, my style of hip hop is going to be completely different from your style. And you know, you might be a popper, you never even learned choreography before, so you're categorized as hip hop because it's all under that umbrella. Hip hop is an umbrella term for multiple styles. So it's like, I never really feel like I have a dancer that's trained in my style. Unless you like train under me as a choreographer, you really don't, it's going to be foreign to you. So it's extremely tough. And I think these kids are getting so talented that we're starting to forget that they're not even professional dancers. Most of these kids, every once in a while, we'll get some dancer that like came off the road and toured with this artist or that artist. But most of the time, these kids are like, they've been in a studio training, and this is their first time in a professional setting. And it's probably the most intense professional setting they'll ever be in. And it changes their lives. I mean, it's really an amazing process for them. You know, I wish we could even follow their journeys after the show. I mean, it really is quite amazing to see them go from like, probably would have trouble booking a job to being like the most sought out dancers in the industry. You know, everybody, because they're so versatile, they grow so fast in a very short amount of time. Yeah, pretty crazy.
And you know, when you're choreographing a routine, what's usually the kind of starting point for you creatively? Does it start with a song? Does it start with a kind of theme that you know kind of inspires you the rest of the way?
Yeah, for me, it pretty much always starts with the song. If it's like a commercial song that we've all known or whatever, or just a song that I can find on iTunes or whatever, you know, I'll listen to the song. I'll listen to it over and over again, like just on loop. And I'll just start to picture different things. And when that right thing kind of like that right visual kind of pops into my head, I'll just start to kind of go with that. And I'll try to always keep a couple other options. Like I'm very like, you know, I like a variety of concepts that I can play with. Kind of naturally starts to take over. And then I kind of just go with that one. But the music really dictates that. Now for a lot of the group routines I do, I have a composer friend of mine named Nathan Lanier, and we collaborate a lot of times. And that will normally come from some kind of a visual I see. Like I have like thousands of photos that I've just saved from the internet, just inspirational photos. And I have inspirational websites that I go to and things. And, you know, some image will just inspire a whole routine. And then that'll be the thing that I hit up Nathan with, and then we kind of start to build the tone and the which instruments he's going to use and the kind of structure. And then that's probably my favorite process, because then I kind of get to be like a maestro of music and dance, and it really feels like it kind of just comes from a place where the music's not telling me what to do, and I get to kind of tell the music what to do. That's like the control freak side, I guess. Because, I think we all have a little bit of that as choreographers. We find out as we talk more and more, we're like, oh, you're kind of a control freak. Oh, okay. That's right.
Now, in your years of choreographing on So You Think You Could Dance, have you had like dancers or contestants in particular that have been your favorites to choreograph for, like, you know, who are capable of certain movements that you just love that you were able to work with?
Yeah, I think one of the most inspirational seasons for me, the one with Cyrus Spencer, I believe it was like season 9. I could be wrong, but he just brought this element that I kind of come from. I'm not like a full animator, but I've worked with the LXD. We had a ton of animators. Chad Smith is one of like the amazing animators in the world. So I've always been really inspired by it, and I've had a background in working with animation. So when he came on that style, it was kind of the first time they really had that element on the show. So it really helped me just be creative, and like I got to like kind of cater routines around him and kind of feel like, okay, cool, you know, the whole robotic thing, but there's a level of technique you're never going to be able to teach them in, you know, 2 days. So it became really fun. And not only was he amazing technically at what he does, but he was also just a natural storyteller, and he understood how to connect with an audience and connect with a partner and just kind of be in the moment. He was very raw, very like untrained. And I think I love that about him, because all that other stuff, you know, just kind of didn't really matter at that point. It was just this kid with this raw talent, and we got to just kind of be free in the room. And Yaya was another one like that too, a few seasons later. And you know, it's always been an inspiration to me. I think animation is a big one.
Well, I want to congratulate you again on your Emmy nomination for So You Think You Can Dance, and thank you so much for talking with me today.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks for talking dance.